Mists of Pandaria. For many, it was the golden age of World of Warcraft. A time of incredible class design, amazing raids, and what many remember as the most balanced expansion ever. So why does it feel like MoP Classic is launching with a giant, unsolved problem that has the community completely divided? Today we're not just doing a tier list, we're having a real conversation. Your comments breaking down some of the biggest controversies facing MoP Classic. From the solved meta that's pushing players out, to the feeling this just isn't the Pandaria we remember. And we'll cover Blizzard's newest frantic attempts to fix balancing in the days before the game goes live. So the number one issue, the one that everything else stems from, is our starting point, patch 5.4.8. This isn't the beginning of MoP, it's the end. We're getting the final patch balancing, complete with tuning designed for endgame gear that we won't see for an entire year. And the result is that the game already feels solved. The mystery, it's just gone. The real Duo X brings up a good point, that a lot of people feel like you could just stack a ton of hunters and there's really no downside. Now, is he exaggerating? Of course, but he's also tapping into a real fear in the community. If we know what's best, why bring anything else? This isn't just a theory either. It's already having a human cost. Look at Fetty, for example. He was forced to play an enhanced shaman back in the original MoP, and he didn't want to play the spec, just had to get a raid spot. Now history repeats itself. He's worried he's not going to have a place at all because guilds are going to be mass stacking the hunters, the warlocks. This is a core frustration. Players feel like they have a choice, play the right class, or don't play at all. And I think that leads to a mindset that plagues modern WoW. It's something you guys have pointed out many times. Cryomancy nails it. Just remember, boys, always optimize the fun out of the game. It's a sarcastic comment, to be sure, but the pressure to play the perfect comp, it can really suck the soul out of the experience. He says he's sad he won't be able to relive the Mistweaver glory days, but he's probably going to play one anyways, just because they're fun. Maybe he has a point. Maybe ultimately fun will win out. After all, players were clearing heroic Siege of Orgrimmar with completely off-meta specs. The content, especially early on, it's just not hard enough to justify this level of gatekeeping. This is where I also want to use another comment from Real Duo X, where he talks about how Pugs being a nightmare because the leaders, they're just so focused on maximum DPS and following the meta. Let's expand on that idea, because what if the community's obsession with stacking the high DPS meta classes, it actually leads to worse performance? Is it possible that a group stacking 14 hunters and warlocks, they're going to end up performing worse than a balanced group of niche classes played by actually good players? The more I think about it, the more I'm starting to become an advocate for the players who aren't on the meta train. See, MoP is as much about doing the mechanics properly as it is about mindlessly pressing an overpowered hunter rotation. If I see an enhanced shaman trying to join my group, or a fury warrior, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. What do you think though? Can a skilled player on a weaker spec actually compete? Let me know. So the obsession with the 5.48 meta, it creates another problem. It erases the journey. For many, MoP is the monk expansion, but the flagship class, it just feels off. Clerics and Mirage, they talk about how awful it feels for monks to be subpar during their launch expansion. Mistweavers, they feel nerfed into the ground because their signature cooldown Revival, it was tuned to the very end of the game. Windwalkers feel like a shell of themselves. I've even said it myself in a reply, balancing a class in Phase 1 around the weapons, the tier sets, from the final raid tier, it's just illogical. This is where player identity comes in too, because Skullcandy, he makes a great point. Some people, they want to play a class that is highly sought after. They love that feeling of being the missing piece of a puzzle. But when the sought after list is only 3 or 4 specs, the class diversity, it plummets. But then you have heroes like Travi saying, monks can be F-tier everything. I'm still playing that. That is an awesome spirit to have, but should players feel like they're fighting the game just to play the class they love? But if you really want to see this whole balance problem in a nutshell, you can't look any further than healers. It's the perfect storm. You have Holy Paladins that back in 2012 remember being awesome, but as Anatoly points out in his detailed comment, feel completely destroyed now. Their spells are weak, their mana costs are high, they don't feel like the best single target tank healer anymore. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the Disc Priest, or had, we'll get to that in a second, the class breaking the game. The community's been practically begging for nerfs to Disc Priest. Panaron wanted nerfs, River wanted nerfs. Davil, a Disc Priest main, he literally says this spec is disgustingly OP, and that other healers are tiers below it. When a main is calling for their own class to be toned down, you know there's a problem. It's not balance, it's hierarchy, and it's forcing the exact kind of class stacking we were all worried about. So with these problems though, the pressure's been on Blizzard to do something, anything. MoP Classic needed to solve balancing fast, or the game is gonna feel very stale very quickly. This week, of course, Blizzard rushed in with a solution, and the opinions so far, they're mixed. The devs have gone in Oprah style. They've tossed out buffs to classes like Druids, Fire Mages, Windwalker Monks, Ret Paladins, Shamans, Rogues. In some cases, they've reverted Mists of Pandaria nerfs, while other changes are completely new. The single biggest winner is definitely Ret Paladins. They've had nearly all their relevant abilities increased by at least 10% damage. Affliction Locks as well, getting a massive buff, their abilities seeing huge damage increases, and Fury Warriors, significant buffs in an attempt to make that playstyle more popular compared to the ever-present arms. Meanwhile, on the healer side, Disc Priests, the Resto Shamans, completely smacked with huge nerfs, while healers like the Mistweavers and the Holy Paladins got buffs. The TLDR of the healer changes in a 25-man, you're probably bringing one of every single healer. My bigger takeaway though is that these last-minute balance fixes, they're really not going to solve the bigger problem. Trying to individually go through and buff and nerf classes using Siege of Orgrimmar balancing, it's going to lead to bigger problems later in the expansion. Patch by patch balancing, where each class gets authentic buffs and nerfs we remember back in 2012. That's the clear better approach in my opinion, though in our community poll you guys were really pretty split. Going with the endgame patch, even with modifications, it's like giving us Phase 8 Scarlet Enclave balancing, balanced around Ret Paladins with Ashbringers, but in Phase 1. Of course Ret Paladins are gonna suck in Phase 1 if you do that, and giving them buffs is really just masking the problem. But what are your thoughts on Blizzard's attempts to fix the 5.48 balancing problems? Do you think their buffs of certain classes will end up making them completely overpowered down the line? Because I do. EditorBot note that Blizzard does say they plan to revert some of the buffs later on down the line, but still, it's a little bit of a mess. Look though, despite all these problems, the solved meta, the class stacking, the balance issues, there is still an undeniable excitement around Mists of Pandaria Classic. As Hoffy says, people are just excited to be in these zones again, to level up, to experience the incredible world. The spirit of MoP is still alive, even if the mechanics are a bit skewed. The community is ultimately resilient, but that doesn't mean we can't ask for better. So I'm turning it over to you. I want to see real fixes based on your answer. If you had a magic wand, you could make one fix for Mists of Pandaria Classic, what would it be? Let me know in the comments, and let's have a real discussion. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the games we love. Now get in those comments, I want to hear your ideas.